Sara and Ahmed thought their love was real, but on their wedding night in Dubai, a shocking secret would turn their dream into a deadly nightmare. The wedding appeared flawless to everyone who watched it from a distance. Bright lights reflected off tall glass buildings, and the city of Dubai stood silent and proud in the background. The bride arrived with dreams she had carried for years, believing this marriage would change her life forever. She had left behind her home, her past struggles, and many unanswered questions. To her, this new beginning felt like a reward after years of emotional hardship. She trusted that love had finally chosen her. The groom seemed like the perfect match. He presented himself as successful, confident, and deeply serious about building a future. Their relationship had grown quickly through online conversations filled with promises and shared plans. Friends and relatives believed destiny had brought them together. The wedding ceremony itself was simple but elegant, showing just enough luxury to impress without drawing suspicion. Smiles filled the room, and blessings were offered without hesitation. What no one noticed was the tension hidden beneath the surface. Both bride and groom carried personal histories they never discussed openly. The bride believed that once the wedding was over, her old life would no longer matter. She convinced herself that the past could be erased simply by moving forward. The groom, on the other hand, believed marriage would give him complete clarity and control. He expected honesty without exception. As the celebration ended and guests departed, the newly married couple stepped into what should have been the happiest night of their lives. The quiet that followed felt peaceful, almost sacred. Yet within that silence, unseen cracks were already forming. The dream wedding had ended, but the real story was only beginning, moving slowly toward a shocking and irreversible tragedy. Long before the wedding plans began, the bride had learned how to survive on her own. She moved through life quietly, adapting to difficult situations without asking for help. Financial pressure and emotional loneliness pushed her toward the online world, where attention felt easy and comforting. At first, she created a single profile to talk to strangers and escape reality. The kindness she received gave her confidence she had never felt before. Over time, one identity became many. She learned how to adjust her personality to match the person she was speaking to. Some connections were harmless conversations, while others slowly turned into emotional dependence. Gifts and money followed, often offered willingly by people who believed they were helping someone they loved. She told herself she was only borrowing support, never fully accepting the damage she was causing. Each small lie made the next one easier. Despite this hidden life, she still dreamed of normal happiness. She wanted respect, stability, and a family that would be proud of her. When she met the groom online, she believed fate had finally given her a chance to escape her past. Unlike others, he spoke about marriage, responsibility, and commitment. She saw him as her way out, a clean ending to years of secrecy. As their relationship grew serious, she began shutting down her other accounts. She promised herself that once she became a wife, everything would stop. She convinced herself that love could erase her mistakes. What she did not realize was that digital footprints rarely disappear. The life she thought she had left behind was still following her, waiting for the right moment to resurface and destroy everything she had built. The groom's life appeared stable and well organized, but the image was carefully constructed. He lived alone in Dubai and worked long hours, presenting himself as disciplined and successful. To outsiders, he seemed calm and respectful, someone who valued order and tradition. Marriage, to him, was not just a bond of love but a symbol of control and honor. He believed a wife should bring peace and transparency into his life. Behind this controlled image was a man shaped by deep mistrust. Past relationships had ended badly, leaving him suspicious and emotionally guarded. He studied people closely, noticing small changes in behavior and tone. He believed that secrets were signs of weakness and betrayal. When he met the bride online, her attention and admiration fed his need for reassurance. Her devotion made him feel powerful and secure. Financially, he was far from the wealthy man he claimed to be. He carried debts and pressure that he never discussed. The idea of being deceived terrified him because it threatened his carefully built identity. He feared becoming a fool in a city where status meant survival. Marriage felt like proof that he was in control of his life and future. As the wedding approached, his expectations grew heavier. He demanded loyalty, honesty, and complete emotional commitment. He believed marriage erased individual freedom and replaced it with unity under his rules. He never considered the possibility that the woman he loved might have a past that conflicted with his beliefs. To him, trust was absolute, not flexible. By the time the marriage was complete, he believed everything was finally in place. He thought the hardest part of life was behind him. What he did not know was that his fear of betrayal was about to be triggered in the worst possible way, pushing his rigid mindset toward a dangerous breaking point. The turning point came quietly, without warning or drama. The wedding night began calmly, with the city lights glowing through the windows and the noise of celebration fading into the distance. The bride believed the past was finally behind her. She felt relief, thinking her secrets were now safely buried. The groom, however, remained unusually alert, watching small details and movements more closely than necessary. A single moment shifted the atmosphere completely. A notification appeared on the bride's phone, lighting up the screen briefly. It seemed harmless, but to the groom it felt out of place. Curiosity led him to look deeper. What he found was not one message, but a pattern. Multiple accounts, unfamiliar names, and traces of conversations stretched back months and even years. Each discovery chipped away at the trust he believed he had secured through marriage. The deeper he searched, the clearer the picture became. Financial transfers, emotional promises, and carefully crafted identities revealed a hidden life he had never imagined. To him, it felt like the entire relationship had been built on deception. The woman beside him no longer felt familiar. The luxury room suddenly felt small and suffocating, filled with betrayal instead of love. For the bride, the realization came too late. She saw the truth reflected in his behavior and understood that her attempt to start fresh had failed. The digital world she thought she had erased was now fully exposed. Every lie she had once justified now stood unprotected. The silence between them grew heavier with each passing second, charged with shock, disbelief, and a growing sense of danger. That single notification had done what months of planning and promises could not. It tore away illusions and exposed raw reality. What should have been a private moment of joy became the beginning of an irreversible chain of events that would soon turn deadly. As the truth settled in, the groom's emotions spiraled out of control. Shock quickly turned into rage, and disbelief hardened into a sense of deep humiliation. He felt trapped by the marriage, convinced that everyone would see him as a victim of deception if the truth became public. In his mind, the wedding was no longer a union but a carefully planned trap designed to exploit him. The pressure of the moment crushed any ability to think clearly. The bride sensed the shift immediately. The security she had felt earlier disappeared, replaced by fear and regret. She realized that love alone could not undo years of secrecy. The life she had hidden so carefully was now defining her in the worst possible way. She understood that the man she married viewed her past not as mistakes, but as an unforgivable betrayal. The room felt colder, and time seemed to slow as tension filled every corner. The groom's thoughts became dark and obsessive. He replayed every conversation they had ever shared, searching for signs he believed he had missed. Each memory now felt false. He convinced himself that nothing about their relationship had been real. The idea that he had been emotionally and financially manipulated consumed him. Anger fed his sense of entitlement to punishment rather than understanding. What made the situation more dangerous was the absence of witnesses. Behind closed doors, emotions intensified without restraint. The bride's attempts to remain calm only deepened his belief that she felt no remorse. In his distorted thinking, control became the only solution to restore his broken pride. He stopped seeing consequences, focusing only on his wounded ego. By the end of the night, reason had completely disappeared. The space that once symbolized a new beginning now carried the weight of hostility and resentment. The stage was set for violence, driven not just by discovery, but by unchecked anger and a desperate need to reclaim power at any cost. The violence erupted suddenly, fueled by emotions that had built beyond control. What followed was chaotic and merciless, driven by rage rather than logic. The groom lost all sense of restraint, acting on impulse instead of reason. The room became a place of terror, stripped of warmth and meaning. The bride, overwhelmed by fear, was unable to escape the situation that had turned against her so quickly. The attack was brutal and relentless, leaving no room for intervention. Each moment pushed the situation further past the point of return. Outside, the city continued its routine, unaware of the tragedy unfolding behind closed doors. No alarms were raised, and no one came to stop what was happening. The isolation allowed the violence to continue unchecked. By the time the chaos ended, the bride lay motionless. The silence that followed was heavy and unnatural. The groom stood alone with the reality of what he had done slowly sinking in. Anger faded, replaced by panic and disbelief. The weight of his actions became impossible to ignore. What he had believed would restore his pride had instead destroyed everything. Fear took over his next decisions. Rather than seeking help, he focused on self-preservation. He attempted to erase signs of the struggle, believing he could control the outcome as he had tried to control the marriage. Every move was rushed and careless, guided by desperation rather than planning. The room still carried clear evidence of violence, no matter how much he tried to hide it. As the night turned into early morning, exhaustion set in. The groom realized there was no escaping the consequences. The damage was permanent, and the life he had imagined was gone. What remained was a crime that would soon be discovered, and a truth that could not be undone, no matter how hard he tried to conceal it. The discovery came later that day, when routine activity exposed what had been hidden overnight. Staff entered the room expecting nothing unusual, but instead found clear signs that something was terribly wrong. Authorities were contacted immediately, and the location was sealed within minutes. What had been a private space hours earlier became an active crime scene under intense scrutiny. News of the incident spread quickly through official channels. Investigators began by carefully documenting the environment. The disorder in the room told a story that words could not. Marks of struggle, damaged furnishings, and attempts at cleaning pointed toward a violent confrontation rather than an accident. Every detail mattered. Surveillance footage, access records, and timestamps were collected to reconstruct the final hours leading up to the bride's death. The calm image of a wedding night collapsed under forensic examination. The groom was taken into custody for questioning. His behavior raised immediate concern. Inconsistencies appeared between his account and the physical evidence. Small details he overlooked became major indicators for investigators trained to spot deception. His attempts to present the incident as something less severe failed almost instantly under professional analysis. Digital evidence soon became central to the case. The bride's phone and online accounts were examined, revealing the hidden life she had tried to leave behind. Investigators uncovered multiple profiles, financial exchanges, and long-term communication patterns. This information explained the motive behind the conflict, but did not reduce the seriousness of the crime. As the investigation deepened, it became clear that this was not a crime of confusion, but one of escalation. The timeline showed a steady progression from discovery to violence. Authorities concluded that the situation had spun out of control behind closed doors. What began as a wedding celebration had now become a.h. As details of the investigation became public, the case took on a new and disturbing dimension. Authorities began contacting individuals connected to the bride's online accounts. Messages were sent, financial trails were traced, and soon people from different countries realized they were linked to the same woman. Many were shocked to learn of her death, having believed they shared a genuine emotional bond with her. What they thought were private relationships were now part of an international investigation. Several individuals came forward voluntarily, providing records of payments, conversations, and promises they had received. Some admitted they had suspected manipulation but ignored the warning signs because of emotional attachment. Others claimed they had no idea they were being deceived. The scale of the hidden life grew larger with each statement. What once seemed like isolated actions now appeared as a long-running pattern of emotional and financial exploitation. Public reaction was divided as media coverage intensified. Some focused on the bride's actions, labeling her a scammer who lived by deception. Others emphasized her vulnerability, pointing to financial hardship and emotional isolation as possible motivations. Social media debates grew heated, often overlooking the central fact that a life had been violently taken. The narrative became tangled between judgment and sympathy. Investigators remained focused on facts rather than opinions. They clarified that while the bride's activities explained the conflict, they did not justify the outcome. Her past did not lessen the responsibility of the person who chose violence. This distinction became crucial as the case moved forward. The exposure of the bride's double life added complexity, but also clarity. It revealed how digital identities can spiral beyond control and how secrets can collide with real-world consequences. What began as a murder investigation had now become a global lesson about online. The case moved into the courtroom under intense public attention. Prosecutors presented a clear sequence of events, focusing on actions rather than emotions. They outlined how the discovery of hidden accounts led to escalating anger and how that anger turned into deliberate violence. Evidence from the scene, medical reports, and digital records formed a timeline that left little room for doubt. Each piece connected tightly to the next, showing progression instead of a sudden accident. The defense attempted to shift focus toward the bride's secret life, arguing that betrayal had pushed the groom beyond reason. They described his mental state as overwhelmed and unstable in the moment. However, investigators countered this narrative by pointing to choices made after the violence. Attempts to clean the room and delay reporting showed awareness and intent rather than loss of control. These actions weakened claims of a temporary emotional collapse. Expert witnesses explained how anger can escalate when mixed with obsession and fear of public shame. They emphasized that intense emotion does not remove responsibility. The court examined the groom's history of controlling behavior and his rigid beliefs about loyalty. These factors supported the argument that the violence was not random, but rooted in long-standing attitudes toward power and possession. Digital evidence played a major role. Phone data confirmed the timeline and contradicted several statements made during questioning. Surveillance footage placed the groom at key moments, reinforcing the prosecution's case. The court saw how technology preserved truth even when stories changed. As the trial progressed, the focus returned repeatedly to accountability. The bride's past was acknowledged but separated from the crime itself. The central issue remained unchanged. A life was taken through force. When proceedings neared their end, it was clear the verdict would be shaped by evidence, not emotion. The verdict finally arrived after weeks of tense courtroom proceedings. The judge carefully reviewed the evidence, from forensic reports to digital records, and listened to every argument presented by both sides. The decision was clear. The groom was found guilty of murder. His attempts to blame emotion or the bride's hidden past were dismissed as insufficient to excuse his actions. The law had spoken, leaving no room for personal justification. The courtroom held a heavy silence as the sentence was pronounced, a final acknowledgement of the irreversible loss. Outside the courthouse, the public reaction was intense. Some expressed relief that justice had been served, while others debated the complexity of the bride's life and whether it contributed to the tragedy. Social media discussions continued to polarize opinion, reflecting a broader conversation about trust, deception, and consequences in the digital age. Despite differing perspectives, the undeniable fact remained that a life had ended violently, leaving families, friends, and communities struggling with grief. The case became a cautionary tale, studied for its combination of personal betrayal, online manipulation, and unchecked anger. Experts discussed how secret lives and digital footprints can collide with reality, sometimes with devastating outcomes. Psychologists emphasized the dangers of unresolved emotions and rigid thinking, while legal analysts highlighted the importance of evidence in ensuring justice. The story reached beyond Dubai, capturing attention worldwide as an example of how quickly trust can turn into tragedy. Ultimately, the wedding that had begun as a dream ended in death, leaving a permanent mark on everyone involved. Lessons emerged from the chaos. Honesty, transparency, and emotional responsibility are vital, and deception, whether intentional or hidden, can have fatal consequences. The bride's secrets and the groom's rage created a chain reaction neither could control.